Thank you. Thank you for that fantastic welcome. And it's wonderful to be here in this incredible city of Liverpool. And I heard Dawn's speech just now. And I thank you, Dawn, not just for what you said today, but what you say and do every day to advance the cause of justice and equality and oppose racism within our society. Dawn and I, earlier this morning, visited the Museum of Slavery in Liverpool. And I urge you all to go, because it shows us just what evil was and what evil did to other people. And it also shows us the incredible bravery of women who stood up to try and stop the slave trade, both in West Africa and the Caribbean, and very brave women like Harriet Tubman that did so much to try and ensure that slaves got a place of freedom. And Dawn will be making announcements and proposals later of what we as a Labour government will do to understand and commemorate, and hope all our children understand and commemorate just how evil that trade was, and how in understanding of history we can prevent the evils of tomorrow. Dawn, thank you for what you've done and what you've been doing here today. And to all women in the party, the shadow cabinet, local councils and activists, I say thank you very much for all that you do for our party. And we have a parity of women and men in the shadow cabinet, and the next parliamentary Labour Party, when we've won a general election, will in all probability have a majority of women MPs as members of it. Because women make an incredible contribution to our party, day in, day out, and the growth of the party. Women like my mother, who spent so many years working for the party, knocking on doors, often in very difficult areas for Labour. But they were and are the mainstream of the party. Our membership has grown enormously, and we're now the largest political party in Europe, and we have more women members than the Tories and Lib Dems have in total of their membership. And whilst the government may be led by a woman, it is not being led by the rights of women. And again, in the current Parliament, we have more women MPs than all the other parties combined. And I have to say what a fantastic contribution they make to Parliament and to the life of our party. And we've selected women in 2/3 of our most marginal constituencies, and I've been visiting marginal constituencies all this year, and indeed ever since the general election. I think I've been to about 85 marginal constituencies now, and the women candidates are working incredibly hard, building all those contacts and that sense of community on the ground. But I'm not complacent about our prospects in the general election, any more than I'm complacent about the prospects of women in our society. This year marks the centenary of 8 million women getting the right to vote. And we have a lot more to do. That was a limited advance, but nevertheless a very important one 100 years ago today. But we made advances in our party, and I want to take this opportunity to pay a warm tribute and a big thanks for all the incredible work she does to our new General Secretary, Jenny Formby. And you look around this room, we are people from all backgrounds, all religions, all faiths. We are diverse. But what unites us together is campaigning to end the hostility in Britain to the poor, to the vulnerable, to the dispossessed that is created by the Tories. It wasn't just the hostile environment that Theresa May created as Home Secretary towards people from the Caribbean, and that was disgusting and disgraceful as anything could be. It's the hostile environment that's there day in and day out to the poorest and most vulnerable within our society. We are campaigning and fighting to build a Britain literally for the many, not the few. A society that doesn't just care for everybody, but is proud to care for everybody, is strong enough to say we stand up with and for the poorest and weakest in our society, because a society is only strong when it cares for everybody within it. The Tories' 8 years of austerity is responsible for what the Prime Minister delicately calls the burning injustices that she said she was going to tackle. But far, far from building an economy for everyone and helping the just about managing, this government has transferred cash from the purses of women to the bank accounts of the very richest men in our society and in the world. It would do this government well to listen to women who have to live with their choices, to build a society for the privileged few. That's the choice of the Tories. Women like Yvonne, who's written to me this week, she lives with the government's choice, a choice made by the government to cut $6.3 billion from the adult social care budget since 2010. It might just be a number to a Tory minister. It's real life for those that need care. And Yvonne asks, when are carers going to get a fair deal and enough money to be able to live on? And she goes on to say, carers are saving the government thousands on what would be paid by the NHS or care homes to do what we do. Can we have a carers charter? Can we have someone standing up for carers' rights and help us? Because most of us are resorting to begging people for things that we can't afford. I think many in this room would understand the pain of wanting to look after somebody you love, somebody you support, somebody you care for, not having enough money to do it, giving up a job in order to do it, or being faced with a care home that is simply not there or not available. It's Labour that's taking this seriously, with Barbara Keeley round the shadow cabinet table, speaking up on social care issues, and us committed to a national care service to ensure there is decency of care available for all those who need it, wherever they are in this country, not a postcode lottery. Another woman has written to me, Liz, the mother of a son with mental health problems. Her son, and this is a very familiar story, was refused personal independence payments after transferring from DLA. She says, we appealed, and he was awarded PIP till December. But in May, his PIP was stopped by the DWP for reassessment. This makes a mockery of the system. Imagine you've been given the PIP, and then it's taken away. How do you survive? And Hannah, who says, as a country, we have known for many years corporate tax is not being paid. The results could fund the NHS and the education system without taxing poor people even more. I'm struggling to support my daughters. What kind of mother cries because she's worried about things like food shopping and bills? And why, despite being one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and we are, in the UK, just last week we were ranked 17th out of 28 EU countries for women's life expectancy. Our country demands better. Labour will deliver better when we've won an election to do so. So we'll stand up for Yvonne. We'll create a national care service with a sustainable budget to provide dignity for all. And we will increase the carers' allowance for unpaid carers. And I announced that as a policy on the first day of the general election campaign at a carers' conference in Birmingham. And Liz, I promise you, Labour will end the hostile environment and restore a social security system to ensure your son and other children with mental health problems are treated with the compassion and dignity they deserve. To Hannah, Labour will end the scandal of multinational companies paying next to nothing and ensure our NHS and public services are funded in the proper way they should be. Let's make no mistakes. We also have to take action to end the gender pay gap. Barbara Castle brought us the Equal Pay Act of 1970, but there's still a gender pay gap of 19%. In government, we'll make sure companies don't just audit, but act. And if they don't, they will face fines for not acting to close the gender pay gap. But change comes about because people stand up in their unions, in their communities, in their societies. And I want to pay tribute to those women from the BBC and in workplaces all around the country, and many of you here today who've said enough of pay discrimination. And I say to brave women who have said, me too, by exposing their experience of sexual harassment and sexual abuse, including in our own party and our movement, we have not always met necessarily the highest standards which are rightly demanded of us. I am absolutely determined our party and our movement will always have the very highest standards so that everyone is safe and secure in our movement, and sexual harassment has no place whatsoever in our movement. And we stand with women around the world challenging misogyny and abuse on the streets, online, or even in political debate. It has no place at all. Let's stamp it out in whatever corner it might hide. There is one of us in this room who deserves a big legacy and should never be forgotten. That is the late Jo Cox. So let us repeat her poignant words, that what unites us is greater than that which divides us. And next week, the day after conference ends, I'm travelling to Brussels at the invitation of the Mayor of Brussels, because Brussels has decided to rename a square in Brussels in memory of Jo Cox, and I've invited her close friends and family to go with me for that event. And I think we should say thank you to Brussels for remembering Jo Cox and the way that she was murdered by a racist, by a far-right extremist. The world we want to see is one built by women like you, women's officers in our constituency parties, reps or shop stewards in the workplaces, campaigners and organisers in local communities. And together we honour those around the world who are standing up to the likes of Trump, trying to control the bodies of women with punitive policies like the global gag rule, and campaigning for abortion rights in Northern Ireland in the spirit of the excellent Repeal the AIDS campaign. It's not often recognised human rights defenders all around the world risk their lives in the most dangerous conflict zones. Many of those are women, often a majority of those are women. Think of what it's like to be a human rights defender in Yemen, in Syria, in the Congo. And also think of what it's like to be a human rights defender in the Congo, exposing the way in which rape has been used as a weapon of war. One of the most poignant events I ever attended was a meeting of women who were victims of rape in Goma, in eastern Congo. They were incredibly strong, they were incredibly brave, they were incredibly determined to bring their children up in a society where rape was not a weapon of war, where boys were not brought up to believe it's okay to be abusive to women. Those are the people we have to support. And those are the people that a Labour government will be supporting when we have a human rights-led foreign policy. It's the world's poorest women taking action against big multinational companies, performing mining operations and others that bring about environmental degradation and wealth extraction from local communities, be it in Brazil, India, South Africa, or somewhere else. Those are the women, Arundhati Roy and so many others, that actually inspire us so much. They inspire me and they inspire all of us. So conference, today, the Tories may talk about equality. They may say their government delivers for all. But the lived experience of women in Britain tells a different story. Labour is the party of equality, the party of women, The party committed to measuring all of our policies on their impact on women in a society. Our Labour government will measure its success on the eradication of discrimination, of poverty, of inequality and injustice within a society. Labour can rebuild Britain. And I want to thank you for all that you do, for the way in which our party campaigns in communities, empowering people for the kind of world we can have and want to have. That's what Labour was created to do. That's what Labour is campaigning to achieve every day all over this country. And as we take this government to task, force them back. And an election will come at some point, I know not when. But I do know the day that comes, we'll be out there all over the country, on the streets, on the estates, talking to people, showing them the world can be a very different place, with a party and a government delivering for the many, not the few. Thank you very much.